everyone? Welcome to Unmasked, where things are discovered, uncovered, brought to the light, and made known. I'm your host, Lamar Byers, coming live to you from PG County, Maryland. If you're interested in finding out about the untold stories behind being a college basketball coach, this is the show for you. Being a former assistant men's college basketball coach for 16 years, there are so many untold stories behind the scenes in the life of a college basketball coach. Now, let's unmask them. Today's guest is a longtime assistant, longtime friend, and Westminster native and Hall of Famer, John David Byers. Never heard anyone call him that, so we won't start today. JD is what most of us call him. So let me say a little bit about JD before we get started with this show. JD is played at Lebanon Valley College, where, you know, like I said, he was a Hall of Famer, retired Jersey. From there, he went to go get his get his graduate degree, and he coached a little bit at FDU Madison. From there, he went back to his alma mater for a year at Lebanon Valley, coached, and then went on to Randolph-Macon, where he coached there for 3 years, and he coached 2 years with his current boss right now, Mike Rhodes. And then from there, when I actually met JD, when I really got to know JD was when he went to St. Francis, PA. I was at American University. We played against each other. And then from there, he goes to Radford University with Mike Jones, who's a great guy that we're mutual friends with. I know he's his former boss, but still friends with today. And from there, he went back and reunited with Mike Rhodes at Rice University, where we had a chance to coach against each other in Conference USA. And then they get the job at VCU, and he had a chance to come back, where he spent the last 3 years with Mike Rhodes. So I want to welcome JD to the show.
Oh, great to be here. I'm glad you didn't do my introduction with my career record versus you, because then the show might be short. I might have to duck off here quickly, because I don't think we managed to get too many wins against you guys.
Hey, all that counts now is you winning now, and you guys are doing you did a great job at Rice. You can do a better job at VCU, and I had a chance to see you guys a few times early in the year when you guys had it rolling, and I know some things went south later in the year, but you guys, I thought you were terrific at the beginning of the year, especially when I saw you guys against LSU, and like I said, you guys are doing a great job there, and I know it's going to be continued success there.
Appreciate it.
So JD, let's jump right into it, man. Let's get unmasked. The first thing I'd like to ask guests is, or say to guests anyway, is there's no handbook to being a college coach. I think a lot of people don't understand that. I think it's like maybe two professions in the world that you don't really go through any training. That's been a college coach, and probably selling cars, being a car salesman, where there's no, like you just thrown into the fire, get it done. You know what I'm saying? So tell me about your first day, first week, first month after things are done with human resources. Like, especially when no one gives you direction. So it could be, when you was at D3 or when you first got to D1, but tell me what's that like?
Well, I mean, my first year of coaching was crazy. I go to FDU Madison as a grad assistant. I was coming off being a Division III All-American, thinking I was pretty good. I get there. I'm working for a guy by the name of Roger Kindle. He's been at FDU for 20 plus years. Has had some really good teams, but they've been just okay. Had a pretty good young roster, though. I was excited, and I think a month into the job, he gets a virus in his heart and basically has to step down from coaching. So his longtime assistant, Pete Marion, had been there for 10 years, takes over as the head coach, and I'm now the only assistant as a GA. So I don't know. Like you said, no handbook, no rule book, making calls to kids. Never been in New Jersey really in my life. So I'm trying to sell a school that I don't know a whole lot about. So I'm trying to learn on the fly, and Pete's trying to help me, but we're also trying to, implement a weight program and get ready for the start of the season and what offense we're going to run and all this other stuff. So man, it was a whirlwind. I was like, what am I getting myself into? And it culminated with basically I thought I was recruiting some really good players, and actually they turned out the places they went, which was not FDU, they turned out being really good. But I didn't know anything about financial aid or nothing, man. I got to the end of the year and I started looking at the recruiting class and there was no one in it. And I was just like, man, like, I don't know if I can do this. So that first year was crazy, man. And the only thing I can tell you about my first year as a D1 assistant is I get to St. Francis, PA in Loretto, Pennsylvania. I'm there May 1st. May 8th, I walk outside to make a phone call because I have no cell service in my office. We're up in the mountains, and man, it was snowing. And I was just like, oh my Lord, where am I? So I had some crazy experiences, but it is really true. No one really tells you how to do this. People guide you, give you tips, but you really got to learn on the fly and kind of learn what works for you. And I've been fortunate to have some really good people, including yourself, that have helped guide me kind of through the way. But them first couple years, you really are out in the deep end, and you really can't swim, so you got to figure it out.
That's true. That's actually really good. What was your best and worst recruiting story?
Man, I mean, I guess it'd be interesting to see. You can answer that question a few different ways, because sometimes the recruiting, the greatest stories are just the seeing guys that kind of overcame a lot to get to where they were and end up having great careers. Um, Man, I'm trying to think. I think the worst recruiting stories are that I've had two kids that when we were at Rice that committed to us, and and then ended up decommitting. I think those are probably the worst and the hardest to deal with, because you blame yourself. You wonder what else you could have done. And in reality, I think the one thing that, you learn going through this, sometimes it's just not meant to be. And sometimes it works itself out for the better. I think that's really, really where it comes down to. So I think those are kind of the worst stories. Man, I'm trying to think of what the best is. Shoot, beating you guys at ODU for anyone was a good story. Obviously, getting Marcus to Rice was a really cool story. Marcus Evans was from the 757. You guys have recruited him really, really hard, and man, I think we got lucky to get that kid in June before he really blew up. So I think that was probably maybe the most rewarding story of all. But I think anytime you're lucky enough to get a kid and it works out and they have a good career, that's a good story, man. I really believe it.
I agree with you. I agree with you on the Marcus Evans one, because that's kind of when you look back and you're like, wow, you should have, if that's a kid you should have gotten. He's in your backyard. And I thought you guys had done a terrific job. And Mike Rose had inroads with a former kid that played at VCU that came from the same high school. So, I mean, you guys did a terrific job for a long time. And, he had a great career, and he's going to continue to do that as well. So, hey, that's kudos to you. You win some, you lose some, and that's actually a really good story.
I don't want any against you, man. So I have to talk about the one victory I had.
So, what? Because I know you're married. Your wife is a Power 5 volleyball coach and got new kid. But even that, but what did you have to give up achieving your current level of success?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's honestly something that I'm dealing with daily now, because I mean, in reality, I think you give up for a guy that didn't play high level Division I basketball. I wasn't connected to a powerful, high school program or AAU program. So I've certainly got lucky. No, I'll be the first one to admit that. And I heard, and I think, one of our mutual friends, Mike Fairley, say this, don't apologize for getting lucky. But in reality, you give up everything. You give up your just, level of fun. I love to play golf. I don't hardly play anymore. and then certainly when you have a family, it becomes even more important that you kind of get rid of some of this stuff. But really, I think if you want to be good at this, you have to give up a lot, and you have to sacrifice a lot of time. You have to be able to overcome a lot of people that would love to be in the positions that you're in. And like I said, I'm very fortunate that I got connected with Coach Rhodes. He recruited me, but didn't take me. He took someone else. I remind him about that daily. But it ended up that, my first year, or my second year, my first year back at Lebanon Valley, I end up seeing Coach on the road, and we're sitting in John Carroll Gym in Maryland, and we end up sitting there for 2 hours and talking. And when Jimmy Martelli left to go to Robert Morris, I get an opportunity to go to work at Randolph-Macon, one of the best Division IIIs in the country. And so I got lucky, man. I really did, and I don't apologize for it. But, your time, hanging out, weddings, all those other stuff, like, just sometimes you have to make a decision if you're going to continue to try to move up in the profession.
True. That's true. What was your best or worst scouting report? And I like to ask that question because sometimes your best scouting report ends up in a bad loss. Like, you thought you did a terrific job, you knew everything. Right. Sometimes your worst scouting report, you're like, man, I missed this, I missed that, and you end up blowing the team out and you win. But what was your best, worst scout report?
Well, I learned in scouting real early. Like, when we were at Randolph-Macon, like, we were on everything, and guys were really locked in. And I got to St. Francis, and I learned that players play. So I remember I went off on a kid one time out because Wagner ran some like ball screen, back screen, and dunked on us, and I was like going crazy. I'm like, we covered that play like 50 times. And he was like, I don't even know what you're talking about, coach. And I was like, yeah, okay, I gotta figure this thing out a little bit. Man, best scouting report. I would say when we beat Oregon State in the CBI, when I was at Radford, it was the first postseason win we'd had. And, we went up there and we were really locked into the plan. And that turned out to be an awesome victory. Man, the worst scouting report, I probably could come up with a bunch of them. I would probably have to say Cal. We went out and played Cal with Jaylen Brown and Ivan Rabb when I was at Rice, and we had just lost two starters to knee injuries 10 days before the season. So we were like talking about how we were going to guard these guys and how we were going to help on Jaylen and how we we're going to guard Ivan in the post. Man, we were down 30 before we even turned around. So I don't know if that was a very good scout.
Wow. Hey, Jaylen Brown, man, third pick in the draft, and he's doing great. So, I mean,
I thought we could guard him, man. I really did. Probably should have been sending two guys to him.
Biggest challenge you have experienced since you become a college coach?
Ooh, man. Just realizing that every kid, and I never believe you could coach every kid the same. And obviously I don't think you could train every kid the same, because I think that, each of them have different intricacies of their game that they're better or worse at. And I think just figuring out each kid and what makes them go and how you can connect with them. I think that's the biggest challenge. And that is something I think as the rules have changed in recruiting. I think they certainly allow us to talk to the kids more now than when we first were in it, when you got that one phone call when they were a junior and once a month, and then it went to twice a week, when they're seniors. I know we can talk to them more, but just figuring out each kid, I think, is the hardest part, because when you do figure out how to get across to them, they have a chance to be successful because they have a chance to hear you. If not, it's all muffled and your message is getting lost in translation, and you end up just beating your head against the wall. So I think that to me is the biggest challenge, because as you know, Lamar, every kid comes from a different background, different upbringing, different type of high school coach or AAU style. So you gotta find a way to get to each young man. And I think that's the biggest challenge for me.
True. All facts. next question, because I think you're one of not just one of the youngest and brightest coaches in the profession. I know eventually you're gonna have your own program. That's from day one when I first met you. Like, you know, you can almost tell when you see some people sometimes, like, who has to be a head coach, made to run their own program. So, do you ever find there are things about you that people misunderstand, and like, what are they?
You know, I think for me, like, sometimes I can come across like, you know, super confident, super bold at times. And in reality, I'm not always that way. It's just, you know, kind of when I speak out, it's from the heart, and it comes across pretty strong. And so I've had to learn, like, to be better with that, you know, even amongst the staff. You know, I've had to learn to be a little softer in my delivery at times, because I just am, you know, a pretty passionate person when it comes down to it, and when I believe something. And so I think that's the part that sometimes people can misunderstand with me. You know, I've grown up in a family where I've had no choice but to be super humble, because they humbled me, and especially my dad humbled me daily. And now my wife, as you know, as you know how it is, my wife, who is a big time coach in her own right. But I think just my delivery, my message, sometimes I've had to learn to soften it a little bit, because it can come across pretty strong.
Question I always like to ask, because it relates to stuff. What would you try to teach your players besides basketball? Because, you know, I always say when kids come to campus, they're young boys and parents drop them off. And the one thing I say to them is, like, they've done a tremendous job, you know, 17, 18 to 19 years, and they did a great job of rim. I don't say raised, because they raised cattle. But I always say, you know, it's my job, you know, for the next 4 or 5 years to take them from young boy, young man to a grown man, because they're going to see things and do things that they haven't experienced. And, like, these are the years that's going to affect them for the rest of their life. So what would you try to teach your players besides basketball?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, the basketball is the vehicle that gives us the ability to teach them, you know, through adversity, through challenge, how to handle success, like the basic tenets. But I mean, we have an opportunity with these guys to teach them about life, you know, and that's to me is a daily thing. I mean, that could be anything from, you know, managing, you know, money, managing time, you know, dealing with the social issues that we're dealing with right now. We have an opportunity to have conversations with these young men every single day that are going to, you know, help them with their future. And you know, certainly the vehicle of basketball, the competitive side and all that is stuff that's going to help them be successful. But these other things, these other areas that I mentioned are just daily things that we can talk to them about, and help them understand the world, you know, through a different lens, that maybe they haven't seen or experienced. I think it's a golden opportunity that we have daily. And, you know, if we're not taking advantage of that, we're not doing our jobs.
What are your best and worst memories in coaching?
Man, let me start good this time. My best memory is going to the NCAA tournament. You know, I've been fortunate to do it 2 different places. When I was at Randolph-Macon, we went to the Final Four my last year. Cutting down nets was a pretty cool experience. And I said it, and it's honestly something that's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. But my first year at Radford, we lost 15 straight games. And man, we were in every game. We had a chance to win at Maryland. We had a chance to beat Asheville, who's the best team in the league. And, like, it just inevitably, from the 15-minute mark of the second half to about the 8-minute mark, the wheels would fall off the cart. And then we'd fight back in the game and gives ourselves a chance. But, man, every game, either getting back on the bus or going upstairs to my office, I was just like, no one tells you how to deal with this right here. And, you know, it's something that I've talked to some other people about, because they're like, man, I never experienced anything like this. I'll be like, when you lose 15 straight games, like I did, then talk to me, because it doesn't get much worse than that.
It's true. What was the most stressful situation you have faced?
Oh, man, this one's deep. This is what we deal with. Most stressful. I mean, that second year at Rice was really hard for us. You know, we overachieved our first year, and you know, we got into that second year and we thought we were going to be really good. And those two guys went down with knee injuries, and we went from really good to really bad really quickly. And you know, it was stressful because you know, we had so much momentum, and we were trying to keep the momentum going, you know, around the university, around in the league with recruiting. And you know, that was a stressful year, and it was tough on all of us because the expectations were pretty high. I think there's probably some things I can't talk about on here, but the most stressful things you deal with, though, is situations with players. And whether it's something they've been involved with, or you know, something they're not handling their business. I think, I don't know, like I said, I know we're unmasked, but I don't probably want to talk specifically. But those, you know, the most stressful situation was that year at Rice. But I think the most stressful situations come down with the individual players when you have to deal with certain situations. I think that's when this job gets really difficult.
I totally agree with you. And hey, I respect, like I said, you can say what you want. That's why it's unmasked. And some things, you don't have to say names. Some people name them. I'm fine with whatever answer you have. It's just we're pulling out stories here. So, quick question. Like, don't have to be a name. It could be anything. But like, what is the strangest thing a player has done outside of the basketball court?
Oh, man. You said there was going to be some difficult questions, man. Things you don't think about on a daily basis. The strangest thing somebody has done. Oh, man. Well, one of the things that happened when we were at Radford, and I won't mention a name, but a kid punched his hand through a window because something that had happened with his family, and he punched his hand through a window. That was certainly one of the situations that we were just like, man, like, you inflicted pain on yourself, and ended up costing himself the season. And he was kind of a leader on the team, so cost himself a leadership role. I'm trying to think of something else that I can say on here that was pretty crazy. Man, I'd have to say that was the one that I've dealt with. I've been fortunate, I'll be honest with you, in 15 years. I want to knock on wood when I say this, but I've been fortunate that I've been, you know, dealing with a pretty good group of kids that have made some pretty good decisions off the court. You know, I'm not saying they've all been perfect, but I've been lucky. So I might not be that interesting on this topic.
No, you're fine enough. Listen, so you've worked, you've been in the business for 15 years. Like I said, I think you're going to be a tremendous coach whenever you get your program. You've worked for Mike Rhodes, you worked for Mike Jones, you know, and some others. You've had a chance to, if you had a chance to work for anyone in men's college basketball, who would that be and why? And you can take out those two guys. I don't want, I don't want Mike Rhodes, being upset with me. I love Mike Rhodes. And that's either AD or head coach, because Ed is a very good AD at VCU as well. But, like, especially if you're looking at being a head coach down the road, is anyone, if you move up to another level or you getting a head job, like AD or head coach, who would you want to work for? Is there like a dream person, and why?
Oh, man. I mean, I think it would be phenomenal to have the opportunity to work, for Roy Williams or Mike Krzyzewski or John Calipari, just the highest of the highs. to see what they kind of endure every day. Because I think it's easy for us on the outside to say, well, you got it the best, so it's easy. But I can imagine like the stress level and things that they deal with can be crazy. I don't know. I would mention a guy like Matt Painter. I think Matt is a phenomenal coach. I think the way he runs his offense is really unique. The way he gets his players to kind of play together. I've always liked how Matt has been. I would mention Chris Holtmann at Ohio State. I think he's really a really underrated coach. Those two guys are two guys that I would mention, Lamar, that I think will be, really unique and cool to work for.
Awesome, man. And they're all very good guys. So that you can't go wrong with any of those guys. And I'm gonna ask you this, because you said it a little bit before. There might be something else that you want to add to it, but like the biggest accomplishment you have experienced since you have become a college coach.
I would say the biggest accomplishment, I don't know if it wasn't my accomplishment. I think I assisted along the way, but watching Javonte Green walk across the stage at Radford. I mean, no other, and there's been other guys that I've been very proud of that have got across that stage, but for him, and not everyone knows his background, but, for how he made it with only one scholarship offer, and how he battled, through a lot of adversity to get to the finish line there. That day was a special, special day for me. Again, I think the wins and the NCAA tournaments and all that stuff are the glitz and the glamour. But what really matters, and what really is going to hold true for you with the rest of your life is watching those guys walk across that stage. And I think watching Wu walk across the stage was my best day of coaching.
That's awesome answer. I mean, that's what it's about. That's the ultimate goal. What movie or TV show title best describes your week?
I think any of the Fast and the Furiouses. I think any of them. I just think you wake up in the morning with a plan, and then just by 9-10 o'clock everything's kind of hit the fan, and you're just kind of ripping and running. So I'm not sure what that button they click in the car when the nitrous goes or whatever, but I feel like I'm on that all day long.
I love that answer. Now, I mean, you played, great player. Now you've been in coaching for a long time. You've been around some good coaches. Like, you might have picked this up. What's your favorite word or phrase?
My wife always says I say unbelievable too often. But usually what I say is, I don't know if I can say this on air, but you can't make this shit up. it like literally there's so much stuff that happens, and like you can't literally make it up. So I'll say that all the time, and like Rhodes has really picked up on it, so he'll come down the office when something will happen, and he'll just yell it down the hallway. But I feel like it happens often.
You definitely can say it. When I subscribe when the YouTube and it says, is this for adults? Yes. And I also have Bruiser Flint on, so that'll tell you a lot as well.
Yeah, there's some classic Bruiser stories, I'm sure.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I think in coaching, it's not about you. I think, it's people talk a lot about servant leadership and different things that we do as coaches. But I think when you start taking things personal in this profession, and especially when you're dealing with young men, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So very early on, when I first worked for Mike, he told me, it's never about you. And you always got to be thinking about the guys around you, what's next. And I think that's been really helpful for me.
Great answer. Good, great thoughts by Mike to give you that insight. What does success mean to you, JD?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me at this point of my career, first success is making my family proud. Knowing that I do a good job, I work hard, I take care of the guys that I work with. I'm a good person, and I think for the players, it's just watching them improve in all areas of their lives. I think that's really, really important. not just as players. I think that's an easier measurement, but just watch guys mature and know that you have a part in that process. I think that's success. I think now that I've been in it for 15 years, which is crazy, just some of the things that my guys are doing that I was able to coach and the success they're having. I think that has been the part that's made me most proud and made me feel like I'm doing the right things.
Awesome. Now, you know, a lot of times, you know, you got losses and could be a tough day at work or practice, and a lot of times you don't bring that stuff home. I mean, you know, your wife being a coach, so she would probably understand a lot better.
Yes.
But like, so different people have different answers, but like, where's your happy place?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of changed over the years. I mean, I think the easy answer is just being down on the floor. I love being down there with the guys, especially when it's one-on-one or you have two guys down there. I think it's a lot of fun. It's where you have their ear the most. They don't feel like you're showing them up because you're saying something in front of the whole team and all the stuff that, you know, as competitive guys that we've all been through. So I think that's definitely one place. And then I think the other part is just being around my family. Especially with the little one, I think it's made a difference. Everyone says it changes you, and it most certainly does.
Awesome. You're not a self-promoter, never been. I know you're a tremendous worker. That's starting when you first came in this business, and a lot of people don't understand that. So I'm going to ask you. I know you never do it, and a lot of other people do talk about it. But if you had to choose 3 adjectives to describe yourself, which would you choose?
Yeah, this is what's the hard part when you're now getting into like thinking about being a head coach is you do have to kind of sell yourself. So I actually have started to think about it a little bit, but I think first one is competitive. I've always been super competitive. I always had that. Some people call it little man syndrome because I'm short, but I think more just kind of, you know, didn't get a lot of respect as a player growing up and had to, you know, any gym I went in, I had to go earn it. And so I think competitive drive is something that I really have. I think I'm very driven. I think I have, you know, a set of goals that I want to get to. There's some daily goals. There's some long-term goals. So I think I've certainly taken an approach where I'm going to go after those. And so I kind of have an internal drive. And then I think the last one is just caring. I do care about others. I care about relationships, friendships that I've developed, a lot of them in this profession, which is crazy. You know, me and you, the way we started, basically hoop group and developing it from there and just others, but then also with the players. So I think those are the 3 that I would kind of put out there.
3 awesome answers. So true as well. What person and or event has had the most influence on your life?
Yeah, I don't know that this is a single-handed event that changed things, but I think I thought I was a Division I player. I just did, like, despite my size or lack of strength and all that stuff. And, you know, I wouldn't trade my path for anything. You know, Coach McAllister recruited me to, you know, better than anyone else. And that's why I went to the, you know, Lebanon Valley. And I think everything has kind of occurred because of that. Like the dominoes happened because of that. But I think I've always kind of kept that chip on my shoulder that people don't quite think I'm good enough. Now, I've learned that sometimes you got to, you know, harness that because it can come across the wrong way. And that's been hard for me. And it's been exposed at times. But I never really forget that, you know, people kind of undersold me or didn't think that I could get it done. And, you know, I made sure that as I got older, those guys that I ran into that played at that level, I made sure they knew that they could have got a piece of me if I was playing at that level.
I love that answer. Love it. Now you talked about it. 15 years, man. That's woo. You know, like, yeah. A lot of people don't like. I mean, they either last or they just ready to give out. You're full of energy. I love asking this question towards the end. Like, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your young self to prepare for as an assistant coach?
Yeah, I mean, we started off this thing talking about no rule book, handbook, getting into this. I think I would tell my younger self to embrace that because I think there's nothing guys ask me, how do you get into the profession? How do you make it? And I tell them, everybody's path's different. I think that's no different for how you develop who you are as a coach. You know, I don't think you read a book or watch or listen to a podcast now, or, you know, watch a, you know, Greg Popovich offensive series or wherever, and all of a sudden you become a coach. I think the best thing I would tell my younger self is take that blank canvas that you're working with and just start to create, and be okay with making mistakes. I've learned way more from mistakes I've made in recruiting. You know, something that I might have said and I didn't explain it well enough, or shouldn't have said it at that time, and it got taken out of context. You know, guys you went after that you had no chance at. Like, be okay with that. Put yourself out there. You know, your masterpiece is going to go through a lot of different phases to get to, you know, creating the coach you're going to be. And I think I would just tell myself and every young coach, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to stare at that blank canvas for a little bit and try to figure out what you're going to put down. And don't be afraid to just start creating. And, you know, you'll figure out your plan from there, and you'll figure out your strategy. But when you're afraid to make mistakes and you're afraid to really get in the fight, you know, you're probably not going to reach your potential as a coach. So I think that's the main thing I would tell myself.
Great answer. Awesome answer. So I want to say thank you again, JD, for being a guest on the show and being unmasked. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off here?
No, I appreciate you having me on here. I think this is the unique thing about our profession is, you know, you and I didn't know each other growing up. We didn't know anything about each other, but meeting you at the hoop group and getting a chance to compete against you on the court and in recruiting, like, this the neat part about that little round ball. It's kind of helped us, you know, build a lot of great relationships. And, you know, I appreciate you, appreciate our relationship. And this was awesome.
No, thank you again. So once again, thank you, viewers, for watching another great show. Stay tuned for the next guest as we get them unmasked. See you next time, and stay safe.